Complex, controversial decisions tend to give rise to a lot of discussion and lots of writing without a lot of satisfaction. A decision maker could maybe get rid of the frustrating, stupid parts of conflict and emphasize the creative, deep solution magic of conflict. What about drawing out the decision? Here's how. What we're proposing is a decision map, a way out of the swirl. Later on, you can do impressive calculations and graphs with the stuff in and around the map. But first, all we want to do is separate out the elements of a decision. This can be done with a fat pen, a flip chart, and a bunch of analysts, and it leads to much more constructive communication. It's commonsensical. So let's start with a goal. In this case, to cross the road. And here are the analysts. They come with some preconceptions about the right solution. They quickly agree on 3 alternatives. Like most decision makers, once they have their positions recorded, they are more ready to talk about the criteria. That's cool. Here are the criteria they developed. Notice by recording what matters about the alternatives, they've started to move towards an interest-based approach. So now they have a simple decision map, for starters. It's good to start filling in the map right away. This helps gut check the map, surface miscommunications. Oh, that's what you meant by digging, and focus needed research. Here you see the dig proponent is bringing in that alternative's initial ratings. Let's not worry about how accurate they are yet. Flying scores remarkably well in the fly proponent's mind. And you can see a little confirmation bias at work here too, but that's okay. This will all work itself out. So here they are, preliminary ratings. The decision makers are much more comfortable with facts than policy, so they act as though safety, fun, and ease matter the same. We'll let them get away with that for now and arbitrarily set the weight of each criterion at halfway. That's why the color goes halfway up inside its square. So for now, this map tells you how well an alternative does for all 3 criteria. For instance, walking is easy, but it doesn't tell you which criterion matters more than others. And now we'll kind of smoosh things around to make it easier to compare the alternatives. This smooshing faithfully represents the arbitrarily equal weights and the perhaps overly optimistic ratings. Look how well fly does. But it doesn't feel right. It's time to talk. What do the analysts really mean by ease? Ease of use or ease of building? Is it easy for a plump analyst to fly? How easy is it to dig a tunnel? What's cool about this simple map is that it encourages the decision makers to discuss one thing at a time instead of jumbling up their feelings about what matters with their analysis of what is, or their concerns about the feasibility of digging with their hopes about the fun of flying. Swirling is not good for decision making. Focused disagreement is. It makes for a stronger decision. After a constructive and focused discussion, the analysts come to an understanding about the ratings. Some they felt comfortable determining themselves. Others they contracted out to experts. If you just compare the 2 graphs, original ratings and final with equal importance for the criteria, the fly and walk alternatives have come much closer together. These ratings are also much more solid. The analysts have developed shared assumptions and vocabulary. They've considered more perspectives, and they can explain their results to the public. The table is intuitive and easily displayed, and it provides an access point to the public so they can retrace the analyst's evolution in their thinking. This member of the public wanted to see what the thinking was around the ease of flying. The cell she clicked is hyperlinked. It's good to have the public check in on the development of the ratings and the decision map overall, but the analysts have gotten this far by pretending safety, fun, and ease are equally important, which is an implicit policy decision in itself. It's also inaccurate and unexplained. This isn't a transparent decision yet. We're going to let the fly advocate put her weights in. She turns the dial. See what happens with ease for the alternative walk? Walk had the highest possible rating for ease. And now this analyst has put the highest possible weight as well. When you multiply two high numbers, the area changes more dramatically. By contrast, putting a high weight on fun hardly does much at all for the alternative dig. For an alternative to get a high score, you need to care about the criterion a lot, and you need the alternative to do well for that criterion. Kind of like real life. Science says good alternative, and policy says important criterion, or not. This analyst is pretty typical of decision makers who've had a chance to think about all the factors of a decision. Fairly balanced, but of course with her clear preferences, in her case for fun and the easy life. With her weights, walk still pulls ahead of fly. And since they are her weights and she helped develop the ratings, she accepts this decision, likes it, even though it's different from her original position. With this method, it's not unusual for people to find and believe that there are actually better ways to meet their needs than their original position would have. The dig advocate cares more about safety. Notice what happens to the bar graph as she adjusts the height of each box. The width stays the same, that's the ratings that were already agreed upon, but the height changes because of what matters to this particular analyst. Of all the analysts, dig is most set on her one criterion of safety, but notice she couldn't bring herself to put 0 for fun. She recognizes it matters a little. People very rarely do put zeros on a robust decision framework, whereas in a debate they can dismiss others' concerns. When they have the whole criterion in front of them, they think more holistically. For her values and the rating she helped develop, walk still comes out ahead. She thinks this outcome is fair. And the walk advocate offers no surprises. Walk was rated highly overall as an alternative, and she tends to really like the strengths of walking, so of course that alternative comes out ahead for her. In this case, for these ratings, given analysts with fairly moderate weights, and some of the moderation may come from their constructive conversations, walk comes out ahead for all the analysts, regardless of their different world perspectives. So why bother going into the scary world of making preferences explicit? First, these analysts might not have come to know how much they agree with one another if they had skipped the weights. By acknowledging the role of policy in their decision, they gave the discussion about the science a chance to go constructive. When science is supposed to make decisions alone, the pressure to stuff policy in where it doesn't belong is almost irresistible, and you are right back to the swirl. When they assigned their own weights, the analysts were encouraged to think more comprehensively about the things that matter to them. The flying advocate does care some about safety, and the dig advocate can see some of the downsides of trying to dig that tunnel. They weren't asked to compromise, they were just led to think more comprehensively about what they really wanted. Second, if you pretend the criteria matter equally, it's not that you would be doing pure science, it's just that you would be fudging the policy issues. Science has its place, and so does policy. The point with the map is to make them all explicit. Another reason to include weights is that a clear alternative does not always emerge. Imagine if this group had included the safety inspector. The safety inspector weighed fun and ease at the lowest level and safety at the highest. For this individual, based on the same ratings combined with a rather extreme, yet rational policy approach, dig is the correct choice. In the next epivio, we'll talk about how to go deeper into decisions when there's no clear frontrunner. For now, let's recap the advantages of this simple approach. It gets analysts to go beyond battling for their favored solution. The map has empty spots until they identify the criteria, and identifying the criteria encourages interest-based dialogue. This approach encourages constructive dialogue by getting the analysts to clarify their terminology, make the rationale for the ratings explicit, for instance the discussion about ease of flying and plumpness, and argue about one thing at a time. It creates a strong, complete, and accessible record, inexorably unravels confirmation bias, encourages analysts to consider others' criteria, and supports joint problem solving. Stay tuned for the next epivio, where we engage in a more complex